Retro Now.
Hey, you scruffy nerf herders. This is Catherine Tabor, Mission Veo from Knights of the Old Republic, and you're listening to Jay and Dennis on Podcast Stardust. Aren't you lucky?
Welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And this is our Friday episode, so we are going to be looking at some recent Star Wars news. But Jay, you want to remind everybody where we can find on social media before we get started?
Absolutely. You can very easily find us on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust.
Okay, the just aligned, the signal's boosted to maximum output, the shield is down. We are now broadcasting to the galaxy. So up first, literally today, as we're recording this, which is the 18th of December, Sean Levy posted on his Instagram account that Starfighter has wrapped filming and it is now going into post-production, which gives it a whole lot of time before it debuts in theaters on May 28th of 2027. So did you see the Instagram post, Jay?
Yes, that's so much fun.
Yeah.
Going into post-production and then running
Yeah.
through a tunnel.
Oh, well, and what was that tunnel? And is that like a set that they used or what was it? I mean, okay, so to set it up for the listeners right now, it's a corridor that is round, I suppose, and he's like running on the wall and all of that. So I've not seen any speculation about this. Now, granted, it was only a few hours that came out, so I don't know.
He's
but
kind of defying gravity there a little bit.
Yeah,
you know,
but he
on
looks
the
like he's
wall.
having fun.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good speculation, though, that it could potentially be something from inside
Yeah.
one of the sets, perhaps. It almost
Well,
looks like something out of like a crazy place in Zurich or something like that.
Well, yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was wondering, I'm guessing this is a real world location that they're going to do a whole bunch of CGI over,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like the way they did the London Underground back when Rogue One was being shot. And so, anyway, I don't know where that is. I expect sometime by the time we get around to recording next week's news, I am guessing someone's going to pinpoint it exactly where that is. But that information is not out there yet because this is so brand new. But isn't it kind of refreshing that this movie seemed to get through the whole shooting schedule, and frankly, that goes for The Mandalorian and Grogu as well, without there being any big controversy about like massive rewrites or having to bring in new directors or reshoot 40% of the film or any of that type of stuff?
Oh, that's such a good point because, yeah, we're so used to the wah, wah, wah kind of news coming out of a lot of these projects where it's like, okay, yeah, well, now we got to go back and do this, or this happened. So now we have to pick up the pieces. And it seemed very uneventful in a lot of ways in regards to that kind of thing, which is good. You know, you like to hear that things did go smoothly and everything was as it was expected, and now we're in post-production and putting those finishing touches on. So yay, for
Yeah,
sure.
and it seemed to go by fast.
It did.
I mean,
It truly did.
It was like what, September when they started shooting Starfighter? I mean, I don't know how much time they spent shooting The Mandalorian and Grogu, and that's not to say that there will likely be reshoots for Starfighter because pickup shots, whatever they need in order to finish that movie. That happens on every movie, and it's not any big deal when it happens. But whenever they get into post production, they realize, it'd really great if we had a shot of this person saying X, whatever it is, to make sense between this scene and that scene. So I'm sure there will be some reshoots, or we didn't get the angle we thought we got on this, so we need to reshoot this one shot or whatever it is. I mean, sometimes it's too big a shot, you can't do it, but there will be reshoots at some point, but they're not a big deal in and of themselves. But that being said, there's just no news out there ahead of this that there was any big disasters or anything happening on set, which is nice. I heard, or I read rather, an interview with Sean Levy. I can't remember what outlet it was with, but he was promoting Stranger Things. And he was talking about how he was asked about this movie, that the mantra that Lucasfilm has been giving him is that, something new. We want something new. We want something new. And he kept going to them with questions like, well, should I include this character, or I should include this, that? And they're like, no, we've already done that. Do something new. Do something new. And so,
Mhm.
I guess that's what Star Wars needs right now. For as familiar a story as we got with Andor and Skeleton Crew and the like, they really did lean into the new, and I think it paid off in a big way. And so I'm very encouraged by that, at any rate.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm psyched. I'm psyched. And it was also encouraging just to read some of the reactions to the post as well. There
Mhm.
was a lot of this is where the fun begins memes, from people and things like that. But I also noticed that there were some people that were saying things like, oh, same thing we were saying. It's great to see a Star Wars movie actually wrapped. It's
Uh-huh.
great to have this to look forward to. Or, one person, I can't remember exactly how they said it, but it was like my faith in Star Wars movies has been restored, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because we've been saying, like, we've had sort of the rug pulled out from underneath us on a lot of these projects. So this confirmation is a gift, definitely.
Yeah, and it's just so different than, you know, I keep comparing it to The Force Awakens and when that movie was in production, because it was a new Star Wars era. And this
Mhm.
is a new
Mhm.
era of Star Wars movies as well. But between this and The Mandalorian Grogu, I just feel like there's like nothing out there beyond, the trailer we got for The Mandalorian Grogu. There's not a whole lot of spoilers out there about what the story is about.
Mhm.
We've been introduced to some of the characters, but we ultimately don't know that much about either one of these movies
Right.
beyond the limited amount of stuff, which is so different. Because if you wanted to find out The Force Awakens before that hit theaters, you could find out about that movie before it hit theaters. And I actively avoided things after a certain point on that because I wanted it to be fresh. I wanted it to be an experience when I got there. And it just blows my mind that they got through filming Starfighter, and we've had like whatever it is that Sean Levy's put on his Instagram account, but we don't have any other like shots anywhere
Mhm.
online.
Lots of mystery. That's
Yeah,
for sure.
that's pretty cool. I'm really
It
excited
is.
for
Oh,
that,
for
and
sure.
I am so intrigued by this movie and the basically this new era of Star Wars storytelling that we're about to get. So can't wait. I'm looking forward to May 2026 for Mandalorian Grogu and May 2027 for Starfighter. So it's going to be here before we know it. Can't believe it.
Roger, Roger, for sure.
All right. Well, the darndest things happen. And it was last week, you and I had recorded news, and we recorded a Clone Wars review, and we recorded the final episode in a Revenge of the Sith series. And
Yup.
not 1 hour after we finished, the Gaming Awards had announcements of two brand new Star Wars games.
Yup.
That's a record for us. We have been the victims of things coming out the day after we recorded, but we've never had anything come out like 5 hours after we recorded, let alone 1 hour after we recorded. But
It's
I remember
true.
when we got off the mics, I was sitting downstairs on my couch enjoying a cocktail, watching some hockey, and I decided to pick up my phone, and all over the place was this news about these two Star Wars games. I was floored by this. Um,
Yeah, it was definitely just you talk about having the rug pulled out from underneath you, but this one definitely in a good way. And it was so funny because when you texted me, you're like, literally announced an hour ago.
yeah, yeah,
And I said, of course. Well, at least we could talk about it next week.
yeah. So we had our news episode planned for us a week in advance, which was nice. Because sometimes we're
Yes,
waiting till the last second to figure these things out. But okay,
that's
so we got two games that were announced. The first of which is Star Wars: Fate of the Old Republic. I've got the description that they put out online. You want to go ahead and read that, Jay?
sure. The fate of the galaxy is in your hands in a narrative driven action RPG where you step into the role of a force user on a journey through a galaxy on the edge of rebirth. Blending innovative storytelling, memorable characters, and heart-pounding combat, Star Wars: Fate of the Old Republic immerses you in an unforgettable experience where every decision deepens your journey toward light or darkness.
Uh-huh.
Da-da-da.
Yeah, I have got so many questions about this game. So we got the announcement of the game. We also got a teaser trailer, and we'll get into that in just a second. But this is being produced by Argonaut Studios, which is brand new, and
Mhm.
it is under development by Casey Hudson, who was the director of the original Knights of the Old Republic game and the Mass Effect trilogy. So that's huge.
Yes.
And the name of the game is Fate of the Old Republic. And so the big question is this some sort of a sequel to the Knights of the Old Republic and the Old Republic online game? Or is this basically an introduction into a brand new era of our current canon timeline of Star Wars with the Old Republic
Mhm.
there?
Mhm.
We
Yeah,
don't
those
have
are
the answer to that at
right.
all, but this could go either way
Right,
easily.
right. And there's definitely a lot of speculation out there because I
Mhm.
was diving into this quite a bit because I know there's so many Star Wars fans out there that have so much affection and just so much time invested, especially with the Knights of the Old Republic games. And so a couple of things that I found, and of course, who knows where we're going to land with this is some people are saying it's not a direct sequel, but it's more of like a spiritual successor
Right.
to Knights of the Old Republic, and it's gonna maybe aim to capture the feel, the themes, the player choice, obviously with RPG and, kind of that focus of the original without continuing the same story. But then other people are, of course, looking at the trailer, which we'll talk about in just a second, and going, "Ooh, is that so and so? Could that be this
Yeah.
this character? Could that be, this wreckage of this ship kind of thing?" So it's again, it's one of those things that's fun to speculate, but we don't, as you said, don't have anything definitive right now.
Right. So let's talk about the trailer and then we can pick up the conversation and touch on some of the things you just talked about there. But if you go to StarWars.com, you can find this easily enough right now. And it's about a minute and a half of this trailer. And it starts off with a very long distance shot of a ship flying across space from left to right across the screen. And then you see someone's hand on the control yoke of this ship. It starts to land on a planet that is characterized by frozen mountains and some sort of an ocean. As the ship begins to touch down, you get the glow of the engines as the ship is shutting down. You see some rain that's happening. And then we see someone disembarking the ship from a ramp that retracts, and it looks to be a woman. And we later find out this is most likely a Jedi because their lightsaber gets ignited. And we see her marching with a couple other characters, someone carrying a very large rifle, and something else that appears to be maybe a large droid, kind of like a similar frame to K2SO. And then they approach a gigantic structure in the distance, which, as you're alerting to, looks kind of like a different ship that we've seen before.
Mhm.
And then as they get towards the entrance, there looks like there is maybe some flames or heat or something going on in there. And a silhouette of something begins to rise in this portal. And then the close up of our character, the Jedi, ignites her lightsaber. We see the glow of her blue blade reflecting off of her face up close. So that is the trailer in a nutshell. What did you think about the trailer overall?
Oh, I mean, it's very cinematic and it
Yeah.
definitely draws you in. I mean, it's got wonderful perspective shots, both up close and, far away. And you're seeing these different characters and this one droid. And it's funny, my husband was rewatching it with me, and he goes, I think I know that droid. And he thought maybe it was like K2SO. And I was like, no, I don't know. It's not
No.
him, but good call, but I was like, thanks for playing kind of thing. But yeah, so it's again, leaves it open to who is this Jedi? What is their role going to be? And what is this story going to be all about? Are we going to
Okay.
see anybody that we know from KOTOR, that we are going to be brought into this? Is it all new characters? Like what are we going to get?
Okay. I'm glad you asked that question. So, are you familiar with the Knights of the Old Republic storyline?
Very little. I know of it, but I don't know the specifics.
Okay, so you didn't play the games or didn't watch any of
No.
the YouTube videos or anything like that.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
I've watched a few, but I'm not gonna even entertain any delusions that I'm well versed. Let's put it
Uh,
that way.
all right. So I did play the original Knights of the Republic, and I played the sequel, and I played the online game, The Old Republic, quite a bit. And Drew Karpyshyn, who did the Darth Bane trilogy, was a writer for that series. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's imagery here that is definitely reminiscent of things we've seen from the Old Republic games. And one of those things is this main character has some ambiguity, some similarities to Bastila Shan, who is
Mm-hmm.
one of the so spoilers to the Old Republic if you haven't engaged in those games. But that is one of the key NPCs of the Knights of the Old Republic. It is, in fact, this Jedi character that forms a bond with the main character that you play in that. And really, I'm talking about spoilers here. So if you haven't played those games, you can go check them out because they are being remade as far as we know. But in those old games, the Knights of the Republic, you start off as this character who you either are a warrior, you're a scout, you're some sort of a technician, and then eventually become a Jedi. And then eventually it's revealed that your memory had essentially been wiped, and you are, in fact, this character, Revan, who is central to the entire story of the game. And Revan was a Jedi who became a Sith Lord who led an army against the Republic, who was then usurped by his apprentice. And then the Jedi basically did some mumbo jumbo, wiped his memory, and then he leads the fight against his former apprentice. And you can either go light side or dark side and take the the Sith Empire over again. Yada yada. Lots going on there. But Bastila Shan is the key Jedi character companion for all that. And there's definitely some similarities there. I don't know there's enough to say definitively that it is her, but how important is this character in the Revan novel that Karpyshyn wrote? You
Mm-hmm.
know, they had a huge relationship, and she gave birth to his son in all
I
of
did
this.
read that novel, so
Yeah.
and I do know
So
how much Bastila Shan is loved by a lot of fans.
yeah,
So,
Jennifer Hale did the voice for her.
mhm.
So very major character. What do you think about that? Are we better off with just doing a game that, because one of the, okay, I'm stumbling over my own words here, but on StarWars.com, they have an interview with Casey Hudson, and he's talking about the development of this game. It's very early. He's elsewhere has told us that we can expect this game well before 2030. So at any rate, it's coming some point in the next few years. We don't have a release date for it yet. But they are not committing it to being a sequel to these Old Republic games or to being something brand new in the timeline on this. Does it matter to you, or what do you think? What are you hoping for with this?
Well, for me personally, like I said, I am not as invested in these games as I know so many fans, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners are and have been. So for me, I don't have necessarily a wish list kind of thing, as far as which direction that I would like to see it go in. The only opinion I guess that I have on it is it's kind of like one of those things where you have a remake of a movie or a sequel to a movie that was so successful and so well loved back in, like, let's say the 90s or early 2000s, and it was a standalone movie, and then all of a sudden, and we're seeing this a lot in today's day and age especially, where people are trying to capitalize on this nostalgia factor, and they want to say, oh well, people loved this so much back then, let's do a sequel to it and let's recreate it, or let's completely reboot it. And then it's like all of a sudden, oh, you should have just left well enough alone. So,
Sure.
for the fans of KOTOR, I hope that if it does continue the storyline, or that it does have some of these characters that were so beloved reappear in this new video game, that it's done well. And obviously with the same creator, I mean, Casey Hudson, who did the original KOTOR, at the helm, I would think that that would be something that would probably be a little bit more successful than someone just picking it up. But, maybe it would be a little bit more fun to have the stories be a little bit more adjacent to, or even a continuation of kind of thing, or at least feel like the same themes and the same kind of, focus that you had. So, like I said, without knowing everything about the game and just kind of looking at it more as an onlooker kind of thing, that would be my hopes for the fans. But what about you?
Mhm. Well, I'm keeping an open mind when it comes to this. It would be really fun to have some sort of a sequel to the Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2. But I mean, we have the Old Republic MMORPG, which picks up so many of those storylines like 300 years later. So, there's always that as well. But at the same time, if we're not going to get any like movie projects or Disney Plus projects that are set in the Old Republic, I would like to see them start exploring that timeline one way or the other in canon.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's that as well. The other thing that occurs to me is like, you're talking about the success of whether like, picking up these old projects and creating sequels to them. I'm thinking of Baldur's Gate. Okay, so we got the Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 back in the
Mm-hmm.
early 2000s, and then it was just in the past couple of years that we got Baldur's Gate 3. Different
Yes.
studio, different people doing it. Incredibly successful game, incredibly successful story, very dynamic. And
Yes.
I'm hoping for something like that with this game,
Mm-hmm.
where
Mm-hmm.
it's full of possibilities, and then that they continue to update the game to let you like take advantage of new character choices and new companion choices and the like. They really set a bar with Baldur's Gate 3 in that
Oh
regard.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so they really raised it, I should say, really high. So I'm hoping they can do something like that for Star Wars with this game. And one of the things they talk about in that interview is that it's actually not just Casey Hudson there. They also have some people from Lucasfilm talking about it, that this is an untapped area. When you go back this far in the past, there are so many possibilities, and there's a world of potential there with the type of stories you can tell. Well, let's see it. I mean, because it ultimately doesn't have to tell us exactly what happened there in that part of the game. It can be whatever the fans want to do, just like those old Republic games. You could go to light side, you could go dark side, and you could completely change the ending if you wanted. They
Mm-hmm.
neatly wrapped it up in later games so that regardless of what you chose, it still leads to the same place. But anyway, there's the, I am excited for this game. More so than I am for the next one we're going to talk about, which is also interesting. But just the potential for this is enormous, and I'm really, really, really hope they can deliver.
Oh, me too. And here's the thing too, as far as potential goes, as you said, there's so much untapped storytelling that's out there in this particular era. And what I would like to see personally is, because quite honestly, as much as I love video games, probably not going to get to play it. I'm probably going to end up doing the same kind of thing. It's hard with an RPG though, because you can't really watch the cinematic cutscenes and things like that you can from some of these other things from storytelling perspectives, but I'm
Sure.
hoping for things that are spin-off media, things like books, things like comics, those types of things that we can really sink our teeth into, kind of like what we got with Jedi Survivor and Fallen Order. We got some books, we got, some other type of media that really helps those that don't play video games to be immersed in the story and at least be immersed in that world kind of thing. And so that's my hope.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I fully expect there to be tie-in media for this because that just seems to be their way with their really, really major releases. So,
Yeah.
so we'll see. Okay. Well, let's move on to the next game here, which is Star Wars Galactic Racer. This is coming from Fuse Games, and this is very different than the Fate of the Old Republic game. And man, there's so many games coming out for Star Wars, or at least in development. I'm beginning to wonder if some of the other ones are quietly getting canceled, but we'll find out. But anyway, so this is a brand new racing game. I mean, it's obvious from the name of the trailer. The description is the Empire's grip on the galaxy has finally broken, and with its fall comes a new obsession: speed. I'm thinking Keanu Reeves, or Tom Cruise in
There
Top
you
Gun.
go.
But
Yes.
as the New Republic struggles to rebuild, gambling, entertainment, and glory feel a booming underground. Out of this chaos, the Galactic League is born, an unsanctioned racing circuit where syndicates sponsor pilots, fortunes are won and lost in seconds, and only the bold survive. At the heart of it all is Shade, a lone racer with a dream of glory and revenge. For Shade, the League isn't just a race, it's a shot at reclaiming destiny. But standing in Shade's way is Kestar, a ruthless rival who has his own power-hungry plans for the League. As the Galactic League rises, so does a rivalry that could define it. Shade must forge alliances, outpace rivals, and survive long enough to become an elite racing pilot. Speed across new and iconic Star Wars planets, with every world hosting a new kind of chaos. It's not enough to be fast. You have to know your circuits. Branching routes, varied environments, and dynamic risk-reward choices ensure no two runs play the same. Select from Select from multiple repulsor craft classes, each with distinct handling and tactical advantages. Customize your build, unlock new abilities on every run, and master brutal takedowns. Choose which events to conquer as you race through a dynamic campaign of speed, sabotage, and survival, or battle rivals for supremacy in competitive multiplayer. No force, no prophecy, just skill, strategy, and the will to rise. So I think George Lucas would love this because he loves racing
Yeah.
and the like. But what do you think about it, Jay?
Okay, so I honestly, if as much as I would love to play the Fate of the Old Republic, this is right up my alley. I love racing games. I absolutely loved playing like the Star Wars Lego pod racing part of that. Like I would play that over and over and over again. So the fact that this has this kind of campaign mode that you can do, and then you've got these competitive levels, and yet there's a story that goes with it. And it looks like it's from the trailers we'll talk about here in just a second. It looks like the graphics and the different places where you're flying through, challenge wise, to try to get through it are really exciting. So
Mhm.
I would play this game. I would 100% play this game.
Yeah,
That is
I'd be
pretty
tempted to
cool.
give it a try. For me, the limiting factor is simply the galactic scope. Whereas Fate of the Republic seems like there's a world of possibilities. At the end of the day, Galactic Racer is about a racing circuit, which is fine. It can
Right.
be fun, and it looks like it's got plenty of customization, which is one of the things I love about games, where it's just not you playing the same character through a whole bunch of circuits and then just kind of memorizing go left, go right, go up,
Yeah.
go down, 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 left, right, up, that type of thing. Here, it is really about outfitting your racer and taking advantage of the terrain and learning how to beat your rivals and stuff like that. I don't need the multiplayer type stuff. I'm all about the campaign type things and the story. So I
Hmm.
want an
Me
engaging
too.
story here. And this sounds fantastic. Again, for me, it just seems like it could be an incredible story. It just seems like it's on a much smaller scale compared to the other game. But
Oh,
it
it
doesn't
totally
have
is.
but it could be fantastic and fun for what it is. And I'm there for that. But you
For
brought up the
sure.
trailer. So let's talk about that for a second.
Okay.
Right off the bat, we see Jakku and the Fallen Star
Hmm.
Destroyer that we all know from the teaser trailer from The Force Awakens. And then multiple racers go zipping right past it. And then we hear a narrator, and I started transcribing the whole thing, but then I stopped about halfway through. But he says, I want it back the way it was before the Empire shut it down. Massive engines, lightning fast, lives on the line. The pilots are incredible, best of the best. And then he's going on and on about this race and circuit and stuff like
Nicely
that.
done.
Thank you.
You're
But we
welcome.
get lots of racing shots, speeder shots, different speeder bikes, all the different classes of repulsor lifts that we were just talking about a second ago. The classic land speeder from A New Hope. We get to see things similar to speeder bikes and pod racers and stuff like that. And the whole thing ends with a shot of Sebulba here. And we
Yeah.
know this game is coming in 2026. So Sebulba is like enjoying a real revival because he's also in that augmented reality game that just came out on the Meta
Right.
Quest platform, which I don't have, and so I have no like chance of engaging in that. But they're real Lucas Games is really investing in Sebulba, which is that surprising at all to you, or what do you think?
I don't know. He's got a very new little dapper look there. The first thing I said was, "Wow, look at you, handsome." He's
Distinguished.
back. Yes, very much so, especially with
Yeah.
the mustache roll there at the end. But no, I just think that there's something, oddly attractive about Sebulba from a fandom perspective, just because he's kind of the character you love to hate kind of thing.
Hmm.
But he's just a super cool character, and I'm not sure why he's experiencing such a revival, but I'm here for it. I think it's cool.
Yeah.
I really
I don't
do.
know. It was really cool seeing Jakku in the trailer and
Oh,
those
yeah.
environments that they go like at one point you can see them racing up into the Super Star Destroyer remains that are there
Mhm.
in the desert in Jakku, which is kind of cool. It looks beautiful. I'd almost prefer this as like a Disney Plus series compared to a game, just because I just think of the drama around the pod race from episode 1 and all the different type of stories that you could tell about, getting ready for the race, making the bets, conning each other, the sabotage, the race itself, the aftermath of the races and things like that. It just could be incredible. Now, they're going to let players play that, and I will be tempted to invest in this on my PlayStation 5 when it comes out, but I could also just see, settling back on the couch and watching this and having a good time with it.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and I think they kinda try to do this with Resistance in a way, with that whole racing
Wow.
storyline, but, yeah, we won't revisit that, but no, I see exactly where you're going with that, and it would be fun because as they talk about, you're going across new and iconic Star Wars planets, so obviously we have Jakku, from what I could see, there was another one called Ando Prime and then
Yeah.
Sentinel-1. So
Mhm.
that's kind of fun, to get into some of these new things. And I love the idea of the different classes of these, repulsor craft vehicles. So it's not just pod racing, which I think, as you said, you see the like a New Hope, Land Cruiser kind of thing. And so you've got all kinds of these that you can pick from. And so you have different levels of different sorts of vehicles. And as you said, the customization. And I guess for me too, what's really attractive about it is just the fact that I'm the kind of uh player that I like the, I guess you could say, Guitar Hero element to things where you can master certain things, and I like the muscle memory. So, as you were saying, like the up, down, left, right kind of thing. I dig that. And I dig
Mhm.
being able to like improve on my time from the past time or to, pass my PR kind of thing. So that kind of game, as much as I do love the, RPGs and being able to get into that kind of thing, almost that rote kind of gameplay for me is very cathartic and I like that. So like I said, I would totally play this game.
Oh yeah. No, I don't think it's that though. I think it is going to be dynamic from race to
Mhm.
race based on what they've said that you're going to have to figure out what a good loadout for your racer is going to be, what type of racer to use, and then, mastering the course and figuring out that you need to brake hard here or, avoid the Tuscans. It looks like the Boonta Eve is going to be,
Oh yeah.
race on Tatooine's going to be in this game from some of the footage we got. And so, yeah, there's a lot of that type stuff in there. It's just like I said, between the 2 games that they've announced, the Fate of the Old Republic is more appealing to me because I feel like your success is not necessarily so defined by how you decide to build your character. It seems like it's a much
Mhm.
more story-driven game and you're allowed to make choices. Whereas Galactic Racer, maybe you having to min max different aspects of your racer in order to win a level, which is fine. That appeals to some people, but it doesn't. Yeah, I don't know. It just seems like it's less about story decisions and more it is, and like you said, there's certain games that are fun because they make things simple, which is this is the pattern you need to get through this level and the type of thing. But I'm intrigued. I want to see. I want to know more about it. But between the two, I think the possibilities of Fate of the Old Republic is what's attracting me more to that
Mhm.
versus the various. I'm familiar with some racing games there, and it really is about how you want to load out, kit out your car or the like there. And that's not as attractive to me. It was once upon a time, but as every genre of video game has leaned more and more into the customization aspect, that while that used to be something that was a little more unique to racing, it's now commonplace like for everything in there.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, no, that's well said. I
yeah,
like watching other people play RPG games. I think that's a lot of fun.
yeah.
I guess maybe it's for me, I have trouble making those decisions. So
you
I like to
know,
watch somebody else do it.
I was bringing up Baldur's Gate 3 earlier, and I've played through the entire game twice. And I mean, it's a serious commitment. It's 100 hours
Oh,
at
yeah.
least through a
Yeah.
single gameplay. And I started a third one and I put it on just like the easiest level, but I was trying to do like the chaotic and evil choices,
Mm-hmm.
and I cringed every time I did it. I mean, this is not real life.
Mm-hmm.
There's no real consequences for me, but I should go back and finish it just so I can experience everything that game has to offer. But at the same time, I was like, I don't like being like that. It's so
Uh-huh.
anyway.
It's funny that you say that because Colby won, and he's the same way.
Mhm.
And he says, it's just really hard for me to, do something that's against my particular, ethics and morals and that type of thing. And I
Mhm.
started playing Baldur's Gate 3 and I did the whole customization of my character and I was really proud of it. And then I started playing and then I told Colby, I said, well, you do this part. I just want to do the questions and answers. And then I just want the story. I don't want to have to like do the battles and stuff. So there's
Yeah.
that for me.
And that's impossible to do because there's story around every corner in that game, and you're constantly having to make consequential decisions in that one. So
Right. Yep.
yeah. All right. Well,
Things
this
are
is not a Baldur's Gate 3 and Dungeons and Dragons podcast. As much as I enjoy talking about that, we'll have to do like a side episode at some point and get into that
there you
more.
go.
But okay, well then, that's it. So yeah, that'll do it. That was fun. I didn't know that we'd be talking about video games as much as we did, but we did. So
Yes.
thank you all for joining us for this episode of Podcast Stardust and our discussion of this week's Star Wars news. We hope you've enjoyed it. And if so, if you haven't done so already, hey, go ahead and subscribe to the podcast so you'll make sure you get our weekly updates on the news as they come out and everything else we're doing here on Podcast Stardust. And currency of the show is your ratings and reviews. We'd love to get those. That helps get the show in front of more people. So if you got a moment, you could leave a rating on your podcatcher choice, or maybe head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review, a written review. That really would be beneficial to the show. So beyond that, if you want to catch the entire catalog of shows, all previous 979 episodes, one of the best places to do that is over at retrozap.com. And with that, Jay, you want to go ahead and remind everybody of where else we can be found online and social media.
I would love to. And just want to say a quick hello there to any new listeners that might be out there. And you can always connect with us on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust. And you can hit us up on all of our Pinterest boards for tons and tons of ideas for everything Star Wars. And then we also have our 2 YouTube outlets. So you can find us on YouTube and YouTube Music, both of which we'd love it if you'd subscribe to and share those out with your friends as well. And if you'd like to drop us a line, you can send us any questions, comments, or anything in between at podcaststardust@gmail.com. Still looking for those listener questions, as I said. And when we have enough, we'll put them together in that listener question episode. Hopefully, do that after the first of the year. And if you are in need of some new Podcast Stardust swag to show your love to the podcast, you can do that on TeePublic. And the link to that will be in our show notes. So there are 7 different show logo designs to pick from. So you're bound to find a t-shirt or a sweatshirt or a coffee mug that fits your particular style. So once again, hit up that link in our show notes.
All right. Upcoming on the show on Monday, we are going to be doing a year in review episode. So we're going to be talking about some of the content that came out this past year and a few other events and our favorite type of acquisitions that we had. And then on Wednesday, we are going to be getting a jump on Christmas with a holiday episode of Podcast Stardust. So make sure you join us for that. So thanks for listening to episode 980 of Podcast Stardust, everyone. Have a great weekend. And until next time, may the force be